Recently, I've been reading about the Burma campaign during World War II. The last book I completed was A Hell of a Licking by James Lunt, an excellent first-hand account of his own experience of the retreat in 1942 when he was a staff officer in the British Army. I then started The Forgotten War by Jon Latimer, a much longer book that covers the entire war in Burma. Obviously, the first part of the book deals with the British retreat, and I kept having this sense of deja vu when I was reading it. Eventually, my curiosity got the best of me, and after reading a passage that seemed particularly familiar, I went back to Lunt's book and checked. Here's what I found. On the left, we have the passage from Lunt. Quote, Hutton considered the decision to blow was premature, possibly even unnecessary. Hutton was critical of Smith's failure to provide an adequate garrison for the bridgehead sufficiently early for proper defenses to be prepared, just as he was critical of Smith's positioning his headquarters 8 miles west of the bridge, where the only communication with the officer responsible for blowing the bridge was a very indistinct civil telephone line. Surely Smith or his senior staff officer, Cowan, should have remained on the bridge until the whole division were safely across. And on the right, Latimer. Hutton considered the decision to blow the bridge premature, possibly even unnecessary, although he accepted that he might have made Smith wait on the bilin too long. He criticized Smith's failure to provide an adequate demolition guard and the positioning of Smith's headquarters, 8 miles away at Abia, with only the civilian telephone for communication with the officer responsible for blowing the bridge. Hutton also thought that surely Smith or Cowan should have remained at the bridge to ensure the division was safely across. Not to put too fine a point on it, but this is plagiarism, according to my understanding of the word. Latimer does cite Lunt in his notes, but he copies long phrases directly from Lunt without putting them in quotes. This is far from the only instance in the book. I feel confident that I could reveal many more if I was motivated to do a close comparison between the two books, which I am not. But here is another example. Lunt. It was a situation he had to endure, increasingly skeptical of Alexander's tactics, until he was relieved at his own request by Major General J.J.W. Winterton early in April. He was not given another active command. Latimer. On 22 February, Hutton was informed that he was to be replaced, but to remain as Alexander's chief of staff, a most awkward position which he endured until he was replaced at his own request by Major General John Winter before returning to India in early April. He was not given another active command. This passage doesn't have as much copying, although it does have one whole sentence that has been lifted word for word, for which, incidentally, Latimer does not provide a citation. It also contains a common strategy of Latimer to avoid the appearance of plagiarism, which is to change the wording in slight ways. Instead of relieved, he uses replaced. Instead of giving the initials of Hutton's replacement, he gives his first name. He also changes Winterton's last name, which I assume is just a mistake. My understanding is that minor changes like this do not avoid the problem of plagiarism. I'm not going to dwell on that point because there are plenty of cases where Latimer copies things word for word. But I'm just going to mention this because the book is full of these passages where he copies almost word for word, but just changes things slightly. I was not familiar with Latimer before reading this book. A look at his select bibliography from Wikipedia shows a large number of works. You may not think 7 books is a lot, but if you notice, they were all published within the span of a decade. That is definitely a lot. One strategy for writing a lot of books is to lift text directly from your sources, which is something that another prolific author, Stephen Ambrose, was known to do frequently. If we were in a fantasy world where people could get bounties for finding instances of plagiarism in historians, and I decided I wanted to pursue that as a career path, I would definitely look at the historians who wrote the most first. Latimer was not originally an academic historian. He was an oceanographer of all things, but he did end up as a research fellow at Swansea University. When I first realized what was going on, I was curious whether there would be any public fallout from this. However, Latimer passed away in 2009, which is unfortunate but avoids the need for any reckoning. I still think, however, that his plagiarism needs to be publicly recognized.